24시간 불이 꺼지지 않는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
Coming up on Arirang News. In Doha, President Yoon and his Qatari counterpart, Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, agreed to strengthen bilateral cooperation in a range of areas, including energy and defense, marking 50 years of their diplomatic ties. Thousands of children have been killed in the blockaded Gaza Strip in the past few weeks amid the war between Israel and Hamas. Aid agencies are calling for a ceasefire and greater humanitarian access to protect civilians in the enclave. To prevent the lumpy skin disease, which affects cattle from spreading further in South Korea, the authorities are administering vaccines to all cattle farms in the country by next month. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. President Yoon and the Emir of Qatar, Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, met for the first time just a few hours ago in Doha, as President Yoon is there for a state visit. The two also share their visions for bilateral relations going forward. Our Kim Do-yeon leads us off.
South Korea and Qatar have elevated their bilateral relationship to a comprehensive strategic partnership as President Yoon Suk-yeol on Wednesday held a summit with the Emir of Qatar, Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani. The event comes in light of 50 years since diplomatic ties were first established.
The two leaders have agreed to strengthen diplomatic and security communication channels and to further expand defense and defense industry cooperation based on the newly signed MOU on arms cooperation.
In addition, the two leaders have agreed to expand bilateral cooperation in the LNG sector to encompass the entire upstream and downstream sectors, including LNG carrier construction, operation, and maintenance. This comes as Qatar Energy signed deals worth $3.9 billion with South Korean shipmaker HD Hyundai Heavy for 17 LNG carriers. And the two saw the need to look for more areas of cooperation.
Furthermore, both leaders acknowledge the need to expand substantive cooperation in various fields such as infrastructure, investment, agriculture, shipping, culture, people-to-people exchanges, and healthcare.
They showed support for each other in terms of their regional security issues as the Israel-Hamas war continues and the Korean peninsula sees provocations from North Korea.
President Yoon expresses hope that Qatar, acting as a mediator in the region, can contribute to easing tensions through communication with relevant parties. South Korea will also play a necessary role and make contributions.
In response, the Qatari leader showed his support for South Korea's policies toward North Korea. The two men moved on to the official MOU signing ceremony. A total of 5 were signed, making it 13 in total in Doha. They include cooperation in smartphone production, advanced technologies, and deepening exchanges among small to medium-sized enterprises. President Yoon wrapped up his meeting with the Qatari leader with a luncheon, and before he leaves the Middle East to head back to Seoul, he's got a busy schedule. He has a business forum with 300 corporate leaders from both sides and plans to speak to young Qataris at the country's education city. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Shifting gears, thousands of children have reportedly lost their lives in Gaza because of the conflict between Israel and Hamas. And there's too little aid reaching the enclave to meet the needs of people there, and fuel shortage is threatening aid operations. Our Lee Soo-jin tells us more.
Calls for a humanitarian pause to allow for safe deliveries of aid are growing as the number of child casualties continues to rise. The Hamas-run health ministry said on Tuesday local time that out of the 5,791 Palestinian deaths since the outbreak of the war, 2,360 were children. And according to the United Nations Children's Fund, the lives of more than 30 Israeli children have been lost. UNICEF has urged for greater humanitarian access to protect civilians and children, saying that the death toll will continue to rise if aid supplies of food, water, medicine, electricity, and fuel are not delivered. There is especially a dire need for fuel, as without it, water cannot be pumped, and generators that power hospital equipment, such as incubators, ventilators, and dialysis machines, will stop. There are currently more than 100 newborns in incubators and around 1,000 people who need dialysis in Gaza hospitals. The World Health Organization also emphasized the need for a humanitarian pause, saying the hospitals have already begun to run out of fuel for generators.
We are appealing, we are pleading, we are on our knees asking for that sustained, scaled up, protected humanitarian operation. We appeal to all those in a situation to make a decision or to influence decision makers to give us the humanitarian space to address this human catastrophe.
But according to the UNRWA, the aid provided has been inadequate, as in the fourth convoy on Tuesday, only 8 out of 20 that were planned arrived. The UN agency did not specify the reasons why 12 aid trucks did not arrive. No fuel arrived on Tuesday, as Israel has not allowed any to enter Gaza over fears that it will be used in the fighting.
So far, fuel has not been allowed into the Strip. Fuel is extremely urgent because without fuel, the trucks themselves cannot move. Without fuel, the generators cannot produce electricity for hospitals, for bakeries, and for the water desalination plants.
The UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees warned that operations in the Gaza Strip will be halted late Wednesday if fuel is not provided. 이수진, Arirang News.
The latest UN Security Council meeting on the Israel-Hamas war featured multiple calls for a ceasefire. But Israel and the U.S. remain opposed to this idea, with Washington only urging a humanitarian pause. Choi Min-jung has more.
The United Nations Security Council gathered on Tuesday to discuss the ongoing war between Israel and the Palestinian militant group Hamas. Speaking first, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres reiterated his appeal for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire. And while Guterres said nothing can justify what Hamas has done, he said its attack did not happen in a vacuum.
It is important to also recognize the attacks by Hamas did not happen in a vacuum. The Palestinian people have been subjected to 56 years of suffocating occupation.
Outraged by Guterres' remarks, the Israeli ambassador to the UN demanded the resignation of the Secretary General.
How can the Secretary General, with his words, justify in any way the terrible atrocities that happened to our civilians, innocent civilians?
High-ranking government officials from Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Jordan also called for an immediate ceasefire over concerns over the worsening humanitarian crisis. Washington, however, appealed for a humanitarian pause to protect the civilians in Gaza, which falls short of a full ceasefire.
Food, water, medicine, and other essential humanitarian assistance must be able to flow into Gaza and to the people who need them.
This is the strongest remark made by the U.S. so far. National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby on Tuesday also echoed Blinken's proposal during a White House press briefing. However, U.S. officials continue to reject calls for a ceasefire, claiming that it would benefit Hamas by allowing them to recharge for attacks against Israel. Therefore, the consideration of a humanitarian pause does not necessarily mean that Washington has changed its stance, as Blinken backed Israel, maintaining that member states should recognize the right to defend themselves against terrorism. And amid growing fears that the war could widen, Blinken underlined that Washington does not seek conflict with Iran, but warned that it will defend its people and security if Iran attacks U.S. personnel. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Washington's special envoy on North Korean human rights issues has renewed concerns over China's recent repatriation of North Korean defectors. At a related forum on Tuesday at the UN headquarters, Julie Turner shed grave light on the forced return of some 600 North Koreans after detention in China, despite the brutal retaliation they're widely expected to face once back in the reclusive regime. Ambassador Turner further urged the global community to respond against additional repatriations of North Korean defectors by China. In the U.S., the Republican Party has picked Representative Mike Johnson of Louisiana as its latest nominee for House Speaker. Johnson is now his party's fourth nominee for the role. Since its previous speaker, Kevin McCarthy, was ousted in a historic vote 3 weeks ago, the House has been unable to pass bills. Johnson, a lawyer who served on former U.S. President Donald Trump's impeachment defense team, will need to secure 217 votes to win the floor when the House convenes at noon Wednesday local time. With the spread of lumpy skin disease infecting cattle in Korea, the authorities say they'll administer vaccines to all cattle farms in the nation by early next month. Our Lee Si-hoo explains.
The government announced on Wednesday that it's launching a nationwide vaccination campaign as the number of confirmed cattle farms with outbreaks of lumpy skin disease rose to 29 as of 8 a.m. the same day.
To stabilize the current spread of lumpy skin disease in its early stages, we decided to urgently obtain sufficient vaccine doses to inoculate 4 million cattle here by October 31st. The quantity is enough to inoculate all the cows in the country.
This is in addition to the 540,000 doses currently being administered since the first ever domestic case of the disease was confirmed in the city of Seosan in Chungcheongnam-do province last Friday. The plan is to rapidly distribute and administer vaccines to all cattle farms in South Korea by early next month.
If the nationwide vaccine inoculation is completed as planned, the outbreak of lumpy skin disease is expected to stabilize within November, given the 3 weeks needed to develop antibodies for immunization.
Until the inoculations are completed, the transport of cattle from infected farms around nearby cities and counties will be restricted unless they are being moved to slaughterhouses after prior reporting. Transport of animal waste for manure will be allowed only after careful checkups. The authorities are currently calling cattle at infected farms and conducting preventive inspections and disinfection. Some cities, including Pyeongtaek and Ansong in Gyeonggi-do province, are operating 24-hour control centers to contain the outbreaks. The viral disease only infects cattle and is transmitted by blood-feeding insects. It causes fever and skin nodules as well as death in around 10% of infected cattle. The disease used to be endemic to regions in Africa, but began spreading to the Middle East and Asia from around 2012. Epidemiological surveys are being done to discover how the disease was introduced to the Korean peninsula. Meanwhile, the Agriculture Ministry said that domestically produced beef and milk are safe to consume. Lee Si-hoo, Arirang News.
The authorities have now just confirmed more cases of lumpy skin disease, with the number of confirmed cattle farms with outbreaks rising to 34. More than 2,400 cows have been culled so far, and 4 more farms are undergoing testing. And in other news, for the first time in 8 months, consumers here in South Korea expect higher inflation amid rampant fluctuations in global oil prices. The Bank of Korea's Consumer Sentiment Index for October, published this Wednesday, showed that its latest survey revealed the public expects inflation for the next 12 months to average at 3.4%, up 0.1 percentage point from last month. Bank officials are linking the latest finding to concerns over the potential ripple effects of the war between Israel and Hamas. The number of babies born in Korea hit a record low once again in August. Our Humanitarian explains and takes a look at what should be done to help address this chronic problem.
South Korea's population crisis continues as it logged the biggest natural population decline this year. According to data released by Statistics Korea on Wednesday, 18,984 births were recorded in August, nearly a 13% drop compared to the same month the year before. All major regions saw a decline in the number of births with the single exception of Jeollabuk-do province. This is the lowest number of births for the month of August since data was first compiled in 1981 and the biggest drop on year in 33 months. The number of deaths surpassed the 30,000 mark in the same month for the first time since January this year, for the highest number of deaths in August on record. With the number of births at its lowest and the number of deaths at its highest, the natural population decline came to over 11,000, the biggest drop so far this year. South Korea has been seeing a natural population decline calculated by subtracting the number of deaths from the number of births for 46 months straight. With population decline being a serious issue for the country, experts are saying that the direction of population policies needs to be geared towards encouraging women to give birth to more children.
We've entered a stage where having children is a choice. In order for people to have more than one child, they really need to feel that they can raise their children in a safe environment and that the quality of life in this society is worth living.
Concerns over the country's demographics were heightened even further by the declining number of marriages. August this year saw the lowest number of people wed for that month, coming in at just over 14,000, a drop of 7% on year. The number of registered marriages had seen a slight increase at the beginning of the year on the back of eased COVID-19 restrictions, enabling people to host weddings but began to show fluctuations in April. Figures dipped for April before rising again in May, only to decline once again through to July. The number of divorces also showed a decline of around 2% on year, coming to just over 8,000. 문혜련, Arirang News.
With an increase in mobile payment service users in Korea, some say the country is already on its way to becoming a cashless society. With this trend, our An Sung-jin took a look at how service providers are tailoring their market strategies to attract customers.
As a tech-savvy country, South Korea is already well on its way to a cashless society. This was possible due to mobile or other payment services where customers enter a password to make payments using bank account information previously stored on smartphones.
With the simple shake or swipe of a phone, payment has become increasingly more convenient for smartphone users.
A report released by the Bank of Korea showed that the daily usage of mobile payment services for the first half of 2023 increased by 13.4% compared to the same period last year. There are various mobile payment providers, including big fintech companies, credit card institutions, or mobile service providers, where non-traditional bank tech companies take up nearly half of the digital payment methods.
There is a lot of competition and potential for growth in this market, but in the future it could become a market where only the most convenient payment service provider dominates.
Samsung Electronics, where the user base for their mobile payment service, Samsung Pay, has been rapidly increasing, is looking to replace the physical wallet with a digital one. Credit card companies are also trying to meet the growing needs of customers.
We're focusing on our open payment strategy where we can interchangeably use other credit cards on our platform. We're increasing the number of shops that accept KB Pay through partnerships with big tech companies and franchises while also making it available overseas.
As such, these mobile payment services are now stretching beyond the borders of Korea.
For our users to experience the same convenience outside of Korea, we're focused on expanding the number of available countries on our platform, including cross-border payments where tourists in Korea could also use their own national payment platforms. Our service is available in 48 regions, and we're continuing to conduct research in order to understand user preference.
But venturing overseas brings its own challenges.
As companies target overseas markets, I think an important factor is to be able to easily resolve any disputes with overseas service providers. It's different from when a customer has issues during a domestic transaction.
How these different payment services develop is expected to further drive South Korea towards a completely cashless society. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
Today, that is October 25th, is Dokdo Day here in Korea. And this year, there's more reason to celebrate as, according to the Korea Maritime Transportation Safety Authority, passenger numbers on the coastal liner service to Dokdo have rebounded to pre-pandemic levels. Back in the year 2022, over 270,000 people made the trip, and as of September this year, 200,000 people have already been there. Currently, 3 ferries operate on the route between Ulleungdo Island and Dokdo, carrying some 10,000 passengers each week. Passenger capacity is set to rise next March with the addition of a new transport vessel. Farmers in Korea are seeking to move away from chemically intensive farming practices to more biologically based sustainable efforts to ensure better produce and more. Yoon has details.
Dubbed the home of Tanger, this is a Halla Mountain tangerine farm on Jeju Island. The dark green leaves and healthy fruit are noticeably different from those in other farms.
As soon as people walk in, they ask what I used. They ask me what I'm keeping to myself. They ask for the secret.
These are the effects of moving away from conventional farming methods and using microorganisms that strengthen the soil and prevent diseases and pests. Now, this is Gangneung City in the Gangwon-do province, known for its vegetables grown in the highlands. Healthy cabbage is grown at 1,100 meters above sea level, and the problem of dealing with rotting roots has disappeared.
The crop conditions are quite good this year. Last year, we couldn't use a single head of cabbage due to warts, but there were none this year.
This was the case not only for Mr. Kim's 66,000 square meter cabbage farm, but the 82,000 square meters making up other mountain farmlands in the area also had a good harvest season. This year was the first time that more than 30 cabbage farmers of highland cabbage boldly moved away from traditional farming methods and reaped success with a new microbial farming method. The farmers here in Gangwon-do province made a 10-ton container specifically for the purpose of cultivating microorganisms for their farming, and it has paid off.
In the process of microorganism cultivation, there are many metabolites produced, which not only control pests, but also promote crop growth. And because the farmers do the cultivating themselves, this is a low-cost and high-efficiency farming method.
Additionally, there are 30,000 farms that have started using a chitin and gelatin decomposition microbial farming method. As the farming and agriculture industry adapts to the growing importance of practicing carbon neutrality, more farmers are expected to introduce various eco-friendly farming methods that will also be passed down to future generations. 이은진, Arirang News.
Mild and warm weather conditions will prevail across the nation tomorrow. Morning temperatures will be a tad warmer, which will narrow down the temperature gaps. Seoul and Yeosu will be starting off warm at 15 degrees Celsius. Other regions will be warmer than the seasonal norms as well. As for the amount of rainfall, the Seoul metropolitan area, Gangwon-do and Chungcheong-do provinces will see 5 to 20 millimeters. Jeollado provinces can expect about 5. Although they will be in the form of scattered outbreaks of rainfall, thunder and lightning may accompany at times. Tomorrow morning temperatures will range from 10 to 16 degrees nationwide. Seoul will be starting off at 15 degrees Celsius. Daytime highs in Seoul will get up to 21 degrees, Gwangju 23, Gyeongju and Jeju will reach 24 degrees. This weekend, sunny skies will make a return along with warm temperatures. It's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
Well, that is all for tonight's newscast. Thank you for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with the latest news. Good night.
I'm live.
저를 도와주시는 분들이
저희와 함께 해줄 수 있는 세션 분들.
아무리 봐도 펜션 같은데 아니라고 아무도 안 하는 거고.